But the most revealing thing in the room was Jackson's record collection, a dust-covered stack which included the likes of Andy Williams and Frank Sinatra, and then the active stack, the Grateful Dead, the Allman Brothers, et al. My taste in people has changed also, Phil said. None of my friends are basketball people. Aside from Bill Bradley, I never really had a friend on the Knicks. Because of the pressure, the inconvenience, and the competition, you have to stop at a certain level. With your teammates, you get down to everything but your personal lives. Jackson has started maybe 20 games in his tenure with the Knicks, but his bedspring hair, his mustache, and his Ichabod Crane body are as well known to every basketball fan as Jerry West's nose. It's like living in a smaller world, Jackson continued. A complete world, but just a lot smaller. And in a way, professional sports is just like the real world. A lot of people have invested a lot of money, and that leads to politicking and pressure situations. Kids come into the league and get big money right off the bat, and the guys getting the bread have to play, even if someone else is better. When Jackson was a rookie out of the University of North Dakota in 1968, he was a second-round draft choice and signed a one-year contract for $13,500. Bill Bradley turned pro basketball around, Phil said. In 1968, he got $400,000 for 4 years, which was an incredible sum then. After his first game at the Garden, I couldn't find a seat in the locker room because there were 50 reporters around. I mean, people from time and life. Bradley was a public figure to the nth degree. He had the romantic Princeton Rhodes Scholar thing going for him, but mainly, he was the latest white hope. Pro basketball is dominated by black players, but the people who own the sport, pay to see it live, sponsor it on TV, and write about it are white, so they all focused on Bradley. Phil's boots and dirty socks were leaning against the sofa, but nobody seemed to mind. A few people were on the roof, pressing their faces against the skylight, and a young woman was working on a floor-to-ceiling crossword puzzle hanging next to the dartboard. Ball players have to wear suits on most teams in the NBA, Phil was saying as he wiped his hands on his pants. The Knicks happen to be the only club where you can wear jeans. If it wasn't for the fact that I'm a Knick, I couldn't dress and act the way I do and still stay in the league. But Phil's lifestyle does cause some unique problems. He's the Knicks' media hippie, and it has gotten to the point where the counterculture community expects him to trip for every game and to attend an obligatory number of rock concerts. Sometimes I feel like an amoeba on a slide, Phil said, but I just try to ignore all these extraneous things as best I can. They're also totally absurd. It's fun for people to have their superstars, but you can't take the cross off their backs and put it on yours. Phil keeps his perspective by going camping during the off-season, surrounding himself with friends who will still be there the day after he's finished as a ball player, and puffing on a good cigar. He is capable of discussing offense as a very civilized breaking down of a team's defense and of shilling for a hairspray. It's all part of the game, and Phil is careful to keep certain things from getting too close to him. In The Hobbit, Phil said, the Grand Wizard can blow smoke rings in all different colors. He just sits there and blows them to the ceiling. I can only aspire to that. Yet beneath his peaceful hippie smile, Phil was a relentless competitor, a characteristic that would eventually endear him to Michael Jordan. At the same time, he was never possessed by the Vince Lombardi ethic that equated losing with dying. During our 3-year partnership in Albany, what most impressed me about Phil's approach to the game was his ability to make coaching adjustments. After we'd gotten whipped by 20 points by a particular team, I would despair of ever beating that ball club. However, even back then, Phil was able to identify and isolate an opponent's weak points, and by changing the angle of a certain pick, or perhaps forcing a certain player to his right instead of his left, he'd enable the Patroons to turn the score around in the rematch. Phil's special gift was being able to find the isness of a play, a team, a player, and/or a game. And he taught me a lifetime's worth of insights into the strategies and philosophies of the sacred hoop. Among other things, I learned the game will always reveal the players and the coaches as well. Ball players always know when their coach is lying to them and vice versa. Referees are a necessary evil. They spend so many hours in darkened rooms watching game tapes and concentrating entirely on locating mistakes, 3-second violations and illegal defenses, extra steps and fouls called and uncalled, that the beauty of the game eludes them. Ball games are won or lost in practice sessions. A player's character is more important than his talent. There's no substitute for experience, and most players aren't really capable of understanding the game until they're 26 or 27. Role players are almost as important as all-stars. How a team fares in the first 5 minutes of the third quarter is a function of the adjustments made or not made by the coaching staff at halftime. More important than how many points a player scores is when he scores them. Coaching basketball can be dangerous to one's mental, physical, and psychological health. Pro basketball requires a discriminating brutality from even the most marginal players. The perfect game doesn't match the good guys against the bad guys, but features 10 players playing one ball game. And yes, life is indeed a metaphor for basketball. After 2 seasons with the Patroons, Phil and I were becoming dissatisfied with the flex offense, its graceless movements, limited entry passes, and vulnerability to freely switching defenses. Phil had added a box offense to the Patroons' repertoire, but it was too jammed, too physical, and too mindless. We certainly knew the right way to play the game, the picks, the cuts, the setup passes that never registered in the box score, filling a lane on a fast break to create a space for a teammate, hitting the open man, playing balls out defense, rotating, boxing out, all the wordless communications and small unselfishnesses that made the game so much fun. But these ingredients only seem to come together accidentally. The right players matched with the right coach in the right place at the right time. We also knew that despite our collective and individual successes, the championships won in the NBA and CBA, the collegiate games where we'd each notched 40-plus points and 20-plus rebounds, we were both missing something. Our glimpses of hoop-time nirvana were too fleeting, too agonizingly suggestive of another reality where the flow was the norm, where the game transcended the clock, the scoreboard, and the individual players. We could sometimes hear the heartbeat, but we couldn't see the heart. What we sought, what we needed, was a means of systematizing the right way to play.
Learning the game, country style. I'm convinced that every successful coach has been profoundly influenced, for better or worse, by every coach or teacher he or she has ever experienced. The development of my own coaching style, then, has been culled from the personalities and methodologies of numerous dedicated and talented men at various levels of the game. My first teacher was my father, Charles, who, along with my mother, Elizabeth, was a Pentecostal minister. Dad always fit well into any kind of group, and he respected everybody. Instead of delegating whatever work had to be done, he always took on part of the load himself. Leadership manifests in a variety of forms, and Dad had a physical carriage that inspired other people to understand that he was a trustworthy and responsible man. As I grew up, I naturally took on some of my dad's characteristics, not the least of which was his physical carriage. My basketball education began when I was in the 5th grade in Great Falls, Montana. Basketball was an intra-school sport, and my first coach and mentor was Babe, a very popular name for coaches and players in those days. Fortunately, he was able to see something in me, some glimmer of athletic potential and competitiveness that I couldn't see myself. After our very first practice, Babe spent 15 minutes teaching me how to shoot a step hook, which subsequently became my best offensive weapon. Like every other kid my age, I played whatever sport was in season. In the 50s, baseball was the only sport that kids thought about playing professionally, and I was no different. But all sports came naturally to me. I played pitcher and first base in baseball, quarterback in football, and as I continued to grow, I played every position on the basketball court. I also competed in track and field and even played ice hockey in grade school and junior high. I don't think I was particularly a gifted athlete. It was just that I was good under stress, understood gamemanship, and loved competition. But when I was a 7th grader, I began to develop a special interest in basketball. This came about when a 4-H agent named Don Hotchkiss started a league that included teams in 6 neighboring counties in Montana and North Dakota, where my parents had recently relocated. The 4-H's are Health, Hands, Heart, and Hearth. It was a federally sponsored agricultural outreach program that truly emphasized all that was wholesome in rural communities. The official 4-H motto, "Learning to do by doing," foreshadowed my later interest in Zen. Whereas the junior high school basketball team only played a measly 10-game schedule, the 4-H'ers played an additional 12 to 14 games. Hotchkiss confined his coaching efforts to making sure each of the players got an equal amount of court time, while also ensuring that the best players were in the game in the 4th quarter. Our normal Saturday morning road trips packed 10 players, plus Don, into 2 station wagons for 2-hour excursions in severe wintry weather to small towns in Montana like Medicine Lake, Sidney, and Scobie, as well as places like Watford City and Crosby in North Dakota. And if the referees were agreeable, we gladly played a doubleheader. 2 of our road games were on Indian reservations. Their style was to fast break and press from the opening tip to the final buzzer, and it was great fun. Both teams would end up with 70 to 80 points, which was quite a feat for a 32-minute ball game. As much as I enjoyed the helter-skelter pace, by the time I was a freshman in high school, I was ready to be reined in and taught the fundamentals of basketball. My experience at Williston High School was both excruciating and exhilarating. I made the varsity team as a 10th grader, but even though I was 6'1", as tall as any of my teammates, the team was dominated by seniors, so I played a limited role. My coach, Bob Peterson, ran a lot of screen rolls for our sharp-shooting wings and guards. I was more of a driver-slasher, looking to launch my hook at every opportunity, and I had to create most of my scoring opportunities on my own. My biggest advantage was being left-handed. I got to play, and I even lettered, but most of all I was beginning to see much deeper into the game. Up until then, I'd been mystified by the complex movements of the offense and defense, but as the season progressed, I began to recognize the logic behind the cut, every screen, every defensive adjustment. Before long, I was able to anticipate the immediate possibilities and make advantageous moves and counter-moves. My vision and my timing were a step ahead of the other players, so I could react to situations before the defense was ready. It was a lot of fun to be able to force my defender to move in a certain way and then counteract his movement. I was still a neophyte player, yet I'd already identified my comfort zones, where my hook shot was virtually automatic. I was also very quick to the ball for someone my size, and my hands were sure. And above all, I wanted to win. I needed to win. On a more technical level, that was the year that I learned the limitation of an offense based on jump shooting. We had to work too hard for every shot. We rarely got layups, and our post-up opportunities were limited. Things became much more serious on the basketball court during my junior year. I started along with 4 seniors who just finished a championship football season. Even though they were small, they all had tremendous foot speed, strength, and athleticism. They were also fierce competitors who wouldn't tolerate losing. To suit the abilities of this group, Coach Peterson discarded our previous offense and instituted a speed game. I was now a slim 6'5" center who rolled across the lane looking to shoot my hook shot. Very seldom was I allowed to roam more than 10 feet away from the basket. We grew as a team as the season progressed, winning 12 of our last 13 games. We had a wonderful season and reached the final game of the state tournament, where we faced off against the Rugby High School Panthers. All of us Coyotes were naturally nervous, and just before the opening tip-off, our starting forward threw up on the court. I had a good game, scoring 27 points, but Rugby's balanced attack turned the game in their favor. By my senior season, I'd grown to 6'6" and 180 pounds, and I was hitting my stride. Coach Peterson instituted a 2-3 shuffle offense that emphasized my pivot play.